The detective said missing kids usually come home. What happens when they don't?
Based on a true story.
Police looking for John Gacy.
We discovered bodies. By the looks of it, they're younger men.
The things he did to those kids. He's sick.
The system failed these families.
Devil in Disguise, John Wayne Gacy. Streaming now, only on Peacock.
Do you know how many there are?
Up to you to find out.
Hey, the vibes are slipping. I think it's time to bring out the Velveeta shells and cheese. The holidays are a time to go all in on indulgence. Headline your meals with the rich, creamy meltiness of Velveeta shells and cheese and satisfy your holiday cravings like no other. Bring that main course energy to your side dish. Celebrate extra with Velveeta these holidays.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Underrated Movie Podcast. This is a podcast where we discuss films that are underrated, underappreciated, and ones that have slipped under the radar and passed most people by. Today, we're going to be talking about the 2011 remake of Fright Night, directed by Craig Gillespie and starring Anton Yelchin and Colin Farrell. I am your host, Derek McDuff, and for this spooky Halloween-themed episode, I am joined by a spooky guest, and that would be Jason from the Dads from the Crypt podcast. How's it going, man?
Good. Excited to be here on this, I call it, highly podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, glad to have you. You know, before we get too much into Fright Night, what did you want to let the people know about yourself and about Dads from the Crypt?
Yeah, I host a podcast / YouTube channel called Dads from the Crypt, me and two other spooky dads. We started off reviewing Tales from the Crypt episodes, interviewing people that worked on the show, writers, actors, directors, etc. Then, after a couple of years, we ran out of episodes, so now we're doing episodes of Creep Show and Black Mirror and Twilight Zone, and we're also doing like movies. We do have like theme months, so we did like Jaws and shark movies all summer, and we kind of skipping around a little bit, but we always have a good spooky time, keep it light and fun, give a little questionable dad advice here and there, as best as we can. No parent is perfect, and neither are we. So we just, again, try to have it fun. We have some amazing guests, great friends, and then people like in the industry that worked on some of your favorite movies, rated or highly underrated or highly overrated. It's up to you to decide. But and then we just actually had a 30th anniversary screening of Tales from the Crypt Demon Night, and we had a ton of people that worked on the movie there. The writer, producer, some of the actors, but we also had a Q&A with Billy Zane and Ernest Dickerson, and that is on our podcast feed and our YouTube channel, Dads from the Crypt.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Everybody listening should definitely go check that out. But yeah, thank you again for joining me. And then this one, Fright Night, the remake is, I'm excited to talk about it here in spooky season because I think it's a movie that I've thought for since first seeing it was pretty underrated. And when I reached out to you about talking about a spooky movie, this was definitely the one I wanted to talk about most. What's your history with Fright Night, both the remake and the '85 original?
Yeah, so for some reason I never really saw, I saw the memes and the clips and everything of the original for a long time before I actually sat down and saw it. I don't remember when I first sat down and saw it, but it wasn't on my regular rotation as a child for whatever reason. I think actually, if anything, I was scared of as a kid of the box art. I remember that one and Return of the Living Dead 2 have very similar box arts. And they also remind me of the Liberian ghost from the original Ghostbusters in the opening scene. Like they all kind of like that freaked me out as a kid. So somehow I associated all three of those things. So I thought this movie was actually in my head as a kid. I thought this was very, very scary. So I probably wasn't until like my 20s that I finally got around to seeing this, the original. And I appreciate it for its 80s campiness and the effects, but it wasn't like my favorite movie. It's good, but you know, it wasn't like, oh my god, this is like part of my life movie. You know, some movies just hit you differently. For me, Sleepaway Camp is that kind of like so bad it's a good movie that just becomes part of my DNA. You know, once you watch it, everyone has those kind of movies. So I appreciate the movie for what it was, and you know, for its for being of its time, and especially the effects. Effects are very very good in that first one. I remember when this one came out, it's kind of towards the tail end of the reboots cycle we went through in the mid 2000s, early 2010s. For some reason in my head, I thought that this movie came out earlier. I thought it was more like 2008, 2009. I was kind of surprised that that came out 2011 because I think the Nightmare on Elm Street movie was like 2010.
Yeah, I
Either
think 2010, and
2009,
then
2000.
Friday the 13th, I want to say, was 2009. If I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
that came out like a year before. But
Mhm.
the Nightmare on Elm Street one really killed all the like the remakes. That was kind of nail in the
Yeah.
coffin. And then this came out afterward. That was probably in production. They probably were working on it, so they probably couldn't stop that train. But so yeah, I remember I saw it on video, obligatory for like I felt obliged to see it because as a horror fan. But I honestly couldn't remember much of it. I've never been a big Colin Farrell fan. So again, I just wasn't too into it. Yeah, that's kind of my background. I didn't really remember much about the remake. I saw it once around the time it came out on probably on the rent like the physical Netflix back in the day.
Gotcha.
When
Yeah,
they
yeah,
actually had
yeah, yeah.
discs.
Back when that was still a thing. Yeah.
So that's my history with it before I get into
Okay.
the current watching.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. What did you think then? Going back to it and rewatching it for this.
Yeah, so we did. So on my podcast, we kind of correspond at least one movie a month with a T-shirt that the company Fright Rags comes out with. Because one, we love their T-shirts, and two, they sponsor one video a month. Not much, but just a little something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were doing Fright Night. I'm like, okay, let me just revisit. So we revisit Fright Night, and it was good to watch again. I had pretty much the same opinion of it as I normally do. And then when you suggested this as the movie, I was like, I don't remember it being very fondly, but I'll do it. You know, I'll give. I have a theory. I'll give any movie a second chance. And I actually really enjoyed this. I was really pleasantly
Nice.
surprised. I mean, it definitely had some of the trappings of that time, like the overuse of CGI, especially on blood effects. But I thought this was a really solid remake. I know Anton Yelchin is a really, really good actor,
Mm-hmm.
taken way too soon in
Yeah.
like the
Way
prime of
too
his
early.
career.
Yeah.
I think the Penguin movie or the Penguin TV show really turned me around on Colin Farrell because
Okay.
when he gets into an actor like that, especially a bad guy, he's actually really good.
Yeah.
Really turns around on him. And there's a stacked cast in this movie that I really appreciated. And you know, it wasn't a carbon copy of the original. I mean, the basics are the same, but they did enough, I felt, to change things up. Somewhat justified its existence. It wasn't like drastically different, but wasn't like exactly the same. Like, you know, again, Nightmare on Elm Street is kind of like the low benchmark of like
Yeah.
completely unnecessary. Why are we doing this? I felt like this one again. I thought they had a great cast, a great director, and again they had a good enough of a script that you know was different enough and fit a better tone for a modern remake.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you had such a good time with it because, like I mentioned, this has always been one of my kind of, not my favorite, but this has always been a really big contender for me. I might not watch it every year at Halloween, but I always think about it at least. And I actually saw this one before I saw the original. I never
Oh,
really grew up with. I wasn't really big on horror films growing up. And so I would have been like 21 when this movie came out, and I was working, my first job at a theater at the time, so I was seeing everything that was coming out. So I was like, all right, I'll see this movie. I was already a big fan of Anton at the time. I like Colin Farrell, and I think this is really, as you mentioned, he's a really good villain. He's good in a lot of stuff, but like when he kind of like locks in to this villainous role, especially when he can like weaponize his good looks. And I think like him
yeah,
being like a sexy Las Vegas vampire who's just kind of like bringing home strippers and stuff like that so we can turn them into vampires. I'm like, what could possibly be a better use of Colin Farrell? So I thought that was a really cool angle. And like you said, this is not a beat for beat remake, which is a lot of times my favorite remakes are the ones that do a little something different. Because if you're just remaking the movie exactly the same, like Psycho or something like that, the Psycho remake, it's kind of like, why even do this? Like I just watched the How to Train Your Dragon remake, and that's a really great movie. I love the original, and the new one I was like, this is just the same movie. Like why am I gonna watch it? I watch the original, other than I'm seeing it in the big screen again.
Yeah, I love the original How to Train Your Dragon, and I've just like completely boycotted the new one exactly for that reason.
Yeah, it's weird. The changes are so minute and minor, but here, like, it is very much taking that same general theme of the '80s movie and giving it a new spin. Like you said, there are a couple things that don't age super well. There's a couple beats in this where I'm like, oh wow, this was really the age where you can tell it's from 2011 because this is like right when they're like, we got to make everything 3D. There's a couple things that come at the camera that don't look great. But overall, I really enjoyed it. We mentioned Farrell, we mentioned Yelchin. Also, Toni Collette, Scream Queen, is in this.
Not just Scream Queen, but Scream Mom.
Yes, yeah, she's always like a great Scream mom, and so it was really good to see her doing that again in this movie. And then also David Tennant. I thought it was really cool that they're like, oh, this is kind of a modern vampire, but not modern in the way where they're like, it's like Twilight where they're reinventing everything and like making him sparkle. He's still like an old school vampire, but living in a modern society. And the same way they have like kind of like here's a modern vampire hunter. He's this kind of that once again plays into the setting. I love the setting of Vegas. A city that doesn't sleep, that comes alive at night. That's a perfect setting for a vampire movie. And having him be this kind of like Vegas showman who is convinced that he saw something when he was a kid and he made it all up and he built his whole career on that, but he's still got all these relics and stuff like that. But it's all part of the illusion. I really loved the unique dynamic that this movie sets up for making an excuse for a vampire to exist in the modern world and all of the characters that would surround him. What do you think of the setting, all of the ways they make it unique like that?
Yeah, I definitely love that it took place in this like really cookie cutter suburb.
Yeah.
Where I thought that was gonna be a joke of like him breaking into the wrong house because he can't tell any of the houses apart. Like I thought that would have been a funny joke. It felt very like Weeds, if you remember that show that was around around that time. And then Vegas is if anything, I would have wanted more. Like I wanted to see like I mean they probably don't have the budget for this kind of thing, but more like Colin Farrell's Jerry like going on the Vegas Strip or something like that. Picking up like a bachelorette party to feast on or something like that. That's almost the kind of like places they could have gone. That probably would have been taking away the focus of the movie. But yeah, I really again I like when a remake kind of does that where it takes the core concept but puts it kind of a different place. So again, the original takes place in the very just John Hughes suburbia, and puts it like in a very specific place. And I did like David Tennant's like Chris Angel type of Peter Vincent character.
Yeah, he's so good, and you kind of forget that he's not in a lot of the movie. He really only shows up in the back half, but he's so good in it that you think he's along for the whole ride. So I was really a fan of his. I mean, he's got a background presence in that first half, but I love when he kind of comes in, and then I love especially that showdown that they have at the end. I thought that was another really smart use of the vampire mythos. There's all these interesting turns and twists, but that showdown they're having at the end where he's shooting the floorboards above them because they're underground, and Charlie's got the shotgun, and these pillars of light are coming down, and you see a couple of the vampires get roasted, and they're using that to like protect themselves. I thought that was really cool. I thought there was this whole standoff scene where Colin Farrell as Jerry is asking to get into the house because it's that vampire trope of, oh, you can't get in unless you're asked. And he's like, hey, can you give me a 6-pack? And he's kind of like hanging out the door. and weaponizing that politeness that I feel like is
Mhm.
in a lot of horror movies. It reminded me almost of the girl with the dragon tattoo when he's just like, the fear of being rude is more driving than the fear of getting murdered. And that of course comes back when, he's trying to get Tony Collette to, he's like, "Oh yeah, your son's been harassing me. Call the authorities." And you're just like, "Oh man, like I've seen so many horror movies. I'm like, how is this gonna go? She doesn't believe him, so she's gonna let him into the house right here." And then I love that she's like, "No, call the authorities." She's like, "My son is being crazy, but he's still my son. I trust him more than this guy." And then he just blows up their
Yeah, I like
house. I
that.
thought that was such a cool turn. What did you think of the way that they used the vampire mythos to kind of give you these interesting set pieces like that?
Every story you love, every invention that moves you, every idea you wished was yours, all began as nothing. Just a blank page with a blinking cursor, asking a simple question. What do you see? Great ideas start on Mac. Find out more on apple.com/Mac.
Finished training for the day? Time to fight post-workout fatigue with Core Power Protein Shakes. They're packed with 26 grams of high-quality protein to build muscle and electrolytes to help hydrate. The nutrition you need to help your body replenish, rebuild, and repair post-workout so you can power on to the next one. Champion your recovery with Core Power. Visit corepower.com to learn more.
Yeah, no, I thought it was very smart. Actually, I really loved Peter Vincent's like gallery of stuff he quote got on eBay, which is just a funny idea because that's probably how that would happen. People just selling random antiques on eBay, and just the production design on that case, on all those cases, and everything was really cool. And all the different weapons they pick up, and yeah, I like that. Like they show, like it's not just you touch like a stake to a vampire's torso and that kills them. You have to actually really get to the heart. And when the girlfriend character Amy gets turned and Charlie puts a stake in her, but and it kind of disables her, but not enough to kill her. She's like, "You missed." He's like, "I know." Like he wanted to, slow her down, but not actually kill her. So it's interesting. It's almost like a bit of a game of chess. They kind of know how to manipulate the vampires, and then the whole thing with the fire suit at the end was pretty smart too.
Yeah, that was such a great moment. I had forgotten when he's just sitting there in the beam of light and they can't get to him, and David Tennant Peter is starting to turn a little bit and he's smoking, and it's like, all right, how does he get out of this one? And then he, lights the fire suit on him and gets him that way. That was really cool. I also love the bit where he's going up against the Christopher Mintz-Plasse character, his very shitty friend, I will say. And he's trying to decapitate him because, that's one way to kill a vampire, take the head off. And he's just like, yeah, heads are hard to chop off. And he's kind of like, he makes a Pez dispenser out of him, to steal a phrase. I really love that. It's really smart because it uses all those tropes and everything that we know so well. I also love the beat where Amy is running from Jerry, and she grabs a gun with silver bullets and shoots him. And he goes werewolf because it's like, yeah, it makes sense that Peter Vincent would also want to protect himself from werewolves, but that doesn't help you in this situation. I feel like that's a piece of the mythos that someone like that would probably confuse. Like, okay, cool, these silver bullets will stop him. No, they won't. So that was a nice little touch there, I thought.
Right, and then she grabs like a goblet of water. And it's like vampires, and then throws some water on the holy water on his face.
Yeah. And there was some good stuff where Colin Farrell goes, I guess I'll say feral, like where he's like becomes this like vampiric monster, much like they would in the 80s one. That's the one I think they carried over well, was when they kind of vampire out and they get these like long faces that are ugly and the big mouth. And of course there's that one, and there's the one where he's like burning up at the end, kind of like the money shot where he's just like looking in his camera and is like about to be destroyed. I thought a lot of the practical effects and a lot of the CG, not all of it, but was pretty cool to see that kind of like monster style of the vampire.
Yeah, again, of the time that this came out, it's fine. I would rather have practical. It's to me practical effects because they're tangible. It's even if it's not perfect, even if you have to hide like it with like a camera move or something, or like have a quick cut, it's still real.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you know, it's there's still something tangible to it. Where like when I can tell it's more CG than realistic. You just know there's just like it's not. It just feels really fake and artificial, like in a very literal sense. So I'd rather have a shoddy looking practical effect than like a very good looking digital effect. Because again, at least my brain knows the imperfections is what makes me think it's more real than the seemingly perfect digital effect. I'm not saying you can't use digital effects at all, but like I like it more on the subtle side.
I agree, and I like when you blend a lot of digital and practical. So they did a little bit here, but I would have liked to have probably seen a little bit more practical too. And this movie has shown its age a little bit, but for the most part, I think it's really good. Mostly works for me. And something else that I think was really good about those scenes that has aged really well is I love the sound design. I love the way that these vampires sound, because I guess D. Bradley Baker, who's a very prolific voice actor, would do all of the shrieks. And because like when Jerry gets like water thrown on him and he's like essentially boiling and making all these horrific sounds, it sounds so good. I was really a fan of that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And also like there's that song, there's a cover of 99 Problems that plays over the end credits. It's funny because I like sometimes I'll put in a song I like and look for covers of it on Spotify. And I'm a big fan of the Jay-Z version, but I was curious what other people have covered it. And there's like almost like a bluesgrass cover, and I don't know why, but a good bluesgrass cover of a hip hop song really kind of hits. There's a really good one of Gin and Juice out there, and I don't know, there's something really fun about it. So I didn't know it was associated with this movie, so it was really fun when that kind of came up.
Yeah, I love it when you're watching a movie and you're like, oh yeah, like the credits start to roll and you're like, oh, that's what this is from. Okay, I feel like that happens to me. That happened to me a lot when like I would go back and watch a lot of these movies from the aughts or something, and I'll be like, huh, I did not know that was from Twilight. That's a banger, or something like that. So yeah, I always definitely appreciate that. So some good music, some good sound in this one for sure. And also I think some really great cinematography. I think the standout shot from this, there is a really long shot when all the heroes are kind of gathered up in a car and they're being chased by Jerry, and there's the camera is just kind of like swiveling in a circle around them in the car, and it's this long unbroken shot that goes for a few minutes. There's like a motorcycle that gets thrown in the back seat, and you're seeing all the reactions as all these characters are kind of realizing that he's a vampire. I thought that was really, really well done. Did you have any thoughts about that scene in particular, or just kind of the way this movie was shot?
Yeah, I do like how dynamic a lot of the camera shots were. I love a good uncut scene, and that was interesting, except that everything outside the car was like painfully digital, even though it's at night and they're trying to cover things up. People just aren't reacting correctly. Like when he literally throws motorbike into the car, like they don't like quite react to they react to like the jolt, but they don't react to like the tire coming to them as well. You ever see, I think it's God of Men? Children of Men.
Oh, Children of Men. Children of Men, yeah.
Children of Men.
Yeah, it did have that feel. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's what they're going for. But that movie did the whole thing. Like everything that happened outside the car was for real happening. So like this is kind of like they're trying to do something kind of like that, but they're not doing but they're kind of using CG to cheat on everything on the outside. So I give them points for trying, and it looked cool. And I love like good unbroken shots like that. The one that I did actually really like, and it did use a lot of digital effects, was the elevator shot where Charles is just kind of looking out over Vegas. It's obviously like they're CGIing the Vegas scenery, because then it turns or cuts to the outside of the elevator. You can see the Vegas skyline reflected on the elevator as he's going down. It's kind of a cool shot, but I overall do like how this film shot.
Yeah, and there was a few shots that I really loved where you would look into like either a reflection or like a security camera or something, and you would see one of the you would not see one of the vampires there. You would just
Right.
see like the door closing on its own, or like someone being lifted up or something, and then the character would kind of like look, usually in the same shot, would kind of like look past it and then would see the actual physical vampire. I thought that was always a nice touch. I felt like
Yeah.
those beats.
Yeah, definitely. I like that. There's the one shot where one scene where Charlie is coming back to Peter Vincent, and Peter Vincent isn't sure if he's a vampire or not, so he tells him to look in the mirror.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really cool. Just another way that this movie really plays with the lore really well. And speaking of like lore and bringing stuff back, I loved that Chris Sarandon cameo. Did you catch that?
Yes. Yes, of course.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was great.
So it was, yeah, that's one of the things where I think that's a really good way to do a cameo, because, like I said, when I first saw this, I knew who Chris Sarandon was, but I didn't really know that he was Jerry in the original or anything. So it didn't take me out of it. But after watching the original eventually, and then rewatching this one, I was like, oh, that's so cool that they have him in there. I love when remakes, sequels will pay homage to their roots like that. I think that was a really cool beat.
Yeah. Without
to have in the movie.
without calling like too much attention to it. Like you could have put any actor in there and it wouldn't have changed the scene, but it just adds an extra layer. So he's not like, oh, I hope they didn't bite off more than you could chew with this guy, or like something really could have been really cheesy.
Right.
Like I always cringe at that scene in Halloween H2O where Jamie Lee Curtis's mother, plays like a school secretary or something like that, and comes up to Jamie Lee's character, is like, if I may give you some motherly advice. I'm like, oh
yeah,
that's a bit cringe.
Yeah, but they did it just right here, I think. Yeah, I was a fan of that. Any other thoughts that you have just kind of about the movie in general?
Yeah, I really enjoyed. I think the director, I never really put his filmography together, but he is got a really good list of movies.
He did really good and really eclectic.
Yeah. He did Lars and the Real Girl was like his breakout. He did let's see, I, Tonya. He did Cruella. Pam and Tommy, the miniseries, is actually really, really good. Dumb Money was really fun.
And he's got Supergirl coming out. He's going to be the director of Supergirl. Yeah, he is. So I am very excited for that.
Yes, you're right. I was pumped for that in general, but now I'm like really, really excited. That's very cool.
Yeah,
he's the perfect director for that.
Yeah, he's like almost like a journeyman David Fincher, like he gets started in music videos, and kind of like a lot of these movies are ones that you think of like these really auteur-driven movies, but I think they're all incredibly solid, and I would think this one really is too. I was a really big fan of it, and going back, it's kind of weird to like stitch together these very different movies, but I think he's one of those guys who can do it all. So really excited to see what he does with Supergirl, because it seems like James Gunn is just getting people who's like, hey, do you have an interesting take on this character? All right, you want to make Clay? He's like, goes to like what's his name? The horror director. He's like, you want to make Clayface? I'm spacing on his name right now.
James Watkins.
Okay, is it James Watkins? Okay. Oh, you know what? Okay, it's because it's written by Mike Flanagan.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, that's.
Oh
that's
man, Eden Lake. If you want a movie that's gonna fuck you up, watch Eden Lake. That movie, it's still
okay. Noted.
Michael Fassbender, in a really intense role. But yeah, back to the cast a little bit. Toni Collette, I just love. She's just always so much fun, and like, I always think of her in The Sixth Sense as just being like a mom that's just trying to hold it together. And it's the Krampus she's really good in, and Hereditary is like,
Hereditary. Jeez, how did she not get an Oscar for that one? I'm still mad about
it. I know. And Nightmare Alley was really good. Velvet Buzzsaw is interesting. I'll give it that. But yeah, she has a sneaky good horror career. And then also Vince Place. Like he had that moment of just like playing like little bad guy shitheads. But he's really, really good at it. It's like in this and Kick-Ass.
Yeah, no, he's great.
And and we have a little Dave Franco
Yeah,
bit before he
little
became
mini
more
reunion from
famous.
Superbad.
Yeah, yeah. I just watched Together with Dave
Oh,
Franco
okay.
and his wife. I'm blanking on her
Alison Brie.
name. Alison Brie is really good. I really like that. If you like body horror movies, I recommend that. And then Imogen Poots. She's always a good
Yeah.
time. She was in the Black Christmas remake, which actually I kind of like that movie. Just don't think of it as a Black Christmas remake.
Right.
That movie that goes way too far from its roots
Gotcha.
and suffers from it.
Also, I was just gonna say it's nice when she shows up, and also just like I think just I don't know, just one of the best names in Hollywood. Like I'm like or recognizable names for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, definitely one of those like makes like your lips go in the way that it just kind of rolls off your tongue.
Mhm.
And she was also in Green Room with Anton Yelchin.
Right? Yeah, one of his last movies.
But I will say, I never liked the guy who plays Charlie in the original. I think Anton is much, much better in this. I always thought the guy in the original was way too whiny. I think overall he is definitely a better suit for this character. And yeah, it's crazy that he played Kyle Reese because him and Michael Biehn do act and look very similar.
Yeah, Yelchin was somebody who taken way too soon. Just this really incredible rising star who, I don't know, he could do it all. Like I think I know people don't love that Terminator movie. I think it's actually really underrated. And I think he's incredible in it. I think he's always really good, whether he's doing like a smaller indie or doing a movie where he's playing Chekhov or he's doing something like this. I think he always brings it in every role. If anybody wants to check out, there's a really good documentary about him called Love Antosha that is heartbreaking and beautiful. That's just about his life. Highly, highly recommend that. But yeah, I think this is a role that is tough to pull off because I think you can very easily be whiny. Because I think it's hard to be in that role where you're like the one person who is like, oh wow, this crazy thing is happening. No one will believe me. It's very easy to seem annoying in that. I think a movie that comes around the same time that is also a loose remake of another movie, which is Disturbia. I think Shia gets a little bit whiny and annoying in that movie, and it's just kind of like shut up. Whereas in this one, you're like, oh no, like you are rooting for him. You're like, yeah, I know what you're saying to the people. You're like, I know what he's saying is crazy, but please believe him. There is a vampire next door. I think he's really good in this. And then yeah, like all the other actors that you mentioned are fantastic. Of course, Colin Farrell just so good in this, and then David Tennant as really just. I'm not a big Doctor Who guy, but I love him in a lot of the other stuff, and this is no exception because I think he really gets that like kind of sleazy showman who at the end but you can tell that he's got a more likable side to him, and when at the end when he kind of has that turn and goes and helps him out, it doesn't feel like it's out of left field. It feels in line with that character. Yeah, I was definitely a fan of all of the performances in this from pretty much all the listed cast.
I was reading the IMDb, and I always say take everything you read on there with a little bit of grain of salt.
Right.
But one of the items was that when they were developing this for a couple of years, and one of the actors that they were interested in having playing Jerry the vampire was Heath Ledger.
Oh wow, okay.
And it's one of those things like if he was still alive after and how big he probably would have gotten after The Dark Knight and winning an Oscar and everything, would he still have done this movie? What would that performance have been like? Like that sounds terrifying.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. But again, I don't know if he would after that he'd been too big to play this kind of role.
Right. Yeah, because this is like a relatively small movie. Its budget is about 30 million and in 2011 that's like it's not a small budget movie, but it's definitely the low side of that kind of mid-budget movie, which as I've kind of lamented before, doesn't really get made super often anymore.
Right.
And unfortunately though, it doesn't really make its money back. Barely, it makes a little bit more than its budget, but after P&A and everything, like it definitely was a loss. It did okay critically, like it has like a 71 or 72 on Rotten Tomatoes. So definitely one of those movies where it's like, yeah, it did fine. It did well enough to get like a directed DVD sequel. People liked it well enough, but never really got remembered over the years. Why do you think this one kind of just was a little lukewarm and failed to hit with people?
Yeah, I think a couple things. Like I said, I think coming in about a year after the Nightmare on Elm Street kind of killed the idea of the reboot. I think people just had real fatigue and were just not interested in it. I don't know if, again, Colin Farrell had any real star power. And I think Anton Yelchin was still kind of a newcomer at the time. I guess he'd done Star Trek already, but I don't think he's ever been like a big draw. So I think that's a lot of it. I can't remember. Didn't The Thing remake come out around this time too? Was it the same year?
Thing remake, that I think it might have been the same year, or the Thing. I guess it is. It is. Let's see. It's like I guess it's technically a sequel
year.
to because the old one is the 80s one is actually technically the remake, but this is the Thing.
Well,
it's still called The Thing, which is annoying.
It's a sequel, but it's still a horror movie with the exact same name.
Right? Yeah.
And that one was really used because for a lot of reasons. In fact, we're all digitalized over. I think this came out like 2 or 3 years before. I think it probably would have done better. I don't know if it's still been a hit. I think the original Fright Night is just so of its time that I don't know if people are really gonna come out and support it, a new version of it, because they love the original so much. So I think that's one of those things. So I think it's just a mixture of all those. But I do think if it come out before the Nightmare, or maybe not the same year as The Thing, I think it probably would have done at least slightly better, if not more.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you, and I think it's one of those. I don't even know if I realized this was a remake at first when I first saw it until working at the theater, and a couple people mentioned like, "Oh, I'm here to see the Fright Night remake." I'm like, "Oh, remake? That's interesting," because it is such a 80s culty horror movie, right? So that's always a dangerous proposition when you're remaking something. And I think you run into the same problem when you're making like these Lego sequels to these films that are a little bit more cult hits, because it's like, okay, you're appealing to one very specific group that loves this thing, but it doesn't have like a huge wide appeal beyond horror fans. And the people that it is appealing to are kind of like, hey, this is a sacred thing to us. If they love the 80s Fright Night, they might be like, why are you ruining it with this new version? So I do think, it had a hard road where it kind of had the worst of both worlds, where it's like, you've got some name recognition maybe, but not a wide appeal, and the people who might recognize it might refuse to watch it, like you talked about with like the How to Train Your Dragon remake. Obviously this is a very different situation, but I think I appreciate horror fans, but they can be a very particular bunch sometimes.
We are definitely particular. And I'm just looking at the release dates. So this movie, Fright Night, came out August 19th of 2011. And The Thing came out October 14th. So about a couple months apart. And August is kind of like the doldrums of a movie. It's like after all the hype from all the summer movies. If this was an October release, I know that they're not going to put it up against The Thing. But again, if it was another year, if it had more October, or at least more September, when things are starting to like cool off a little bit, I think it probably would have been positioned a lot better. But I think The Thing really is taking up all the air in it, because I think people were just kind of pissed off about it. Just the whole concept of it, I think people were a little bit like, The Thing is the kind of movie that's such a sacred movie that like to even try to touch it is like sacrilegious. Where I feel like The Fright Night is just kind of like, it's more on the camp factor that like I'm more forgiving of, or The Thing is just like considered by many such a perfect movie.
Right.
I think people was already like primed to be a little bit anti, these kind of movies.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And one of the last things I just want to mention was that this movie I was just looking up it's a Touchstone movie. For people listening who might not be aware, Touchstone is just a label that they would put on Disney movies when they wanted to release a Disney movie that was not very Disney presenting. Like, this is obviously not look like a Disney movie, but Disney still wants to make all kinds of movies. And so for a while, before they owned Fox and all these other places, they would just slap Touchstone on something. And it was just like, I don't know, for me, that's kind of a nostalgic thing, especially when it comes to like horror movies. You seeing that like kind of like little lightning bolt logo. The fact that this was a Touchstone, which is a label that Disney does not use anymore, was just nice to see. I don't know. Do you have any feelings about Touchstone at all?
Yeah, actually, I had like a hit of nostalgia, because I'm like, I can't remember the last time I've seen that logo on a modern movie. Because yeah, I very much remember that being like, oh, like we're gonna put this on the movie that like I think it was like Big, that kind of those kind of movies that like are kind of family friendly but have a little bit of edge, like Turner and Hooch.
Right.
Is another one that kind of comes to mind. But like it's family stuff, but a little bit more adult. So yeah, I was a little surprised by that as well.
Yeah, because would be like kind of towards the end, I think, of them using this label. I guess they stop a couple years later. It goes from, I'm just looking it up right now. It goes from 84 is when they have the first Touchstone movie, and 2016 is when they have the last one. So it was just nice. Yeah, it was just nice to see that for me.
And actually, I was waiting for something to happen during the credits because at the end of the original, Evil Ed comes back. Or at least I thought, like, the "You're so cool, Brewster" moment at the end, and like at the end of this one, they're like laying there, and he's like, "Oh, nothing's ever going to interrupt us again," or whatever. I'm like, "Oh, is he just Evil Ed gonna pop up again?" And he didn't. I was really surprised.
Yeah, and especially this is like the era of that.
Yeah. I wonder if they did it and it didn't test very well, or people were annoyed by it. Who knows? I was expecting his character to have like at least one more like poppin' bit.
But yeah, no, that was interesting because he kind of shows up at the beginning as kind of the person who gets the events kicked off and then comes back for that one scene, and then that's about it. But he's great in it. Like you said, this is a really in that middle of his run of just being like little shitheads, which I feel like culminates a couple years later with him playing himself being a real shithead, and this is the end. I thought that was a great little culmination to that. But like I said, love this movie. Really glad we got to talk about it. And I just had one more question for you before we get out of here, unless you have any other things you wanted to throw out about Fright Night.
No, I think we covered it. Again, I was very pleasantly surprised. I put this at the top of the remakes, of like post 2000, to the mid 2010s.
Nice. I'm glad to hear that. Well, then that leads perfectly into my question, which is, do you have a favorite horror remake? What's one, and it doesn't have to be from this era. It could be any horror remake, but what's a horror remake that did it right?
Well, like there's the holy trinity, I think, of horror remakes, and they all come out within a couple years of each other in the mid 80s with like major, effects. And they're all like The Thing, The Fly, and The Blob. Those were all three very, very, very good movies. They're all remakes. And I think the trick is, I think all of those, the original movies came out like at least 40 years. I guess probably they're all 50s movies. So about 30 years. I think a movie has to be at least 30 years old to like really qualify or to settle enough. You want to do a remake. But I think, when you, the leap from the 50s to the 80s is like so huge. Where you look at the leap in like culture from the 80s to the 2010s, it's not as wide as I think from the 50s. But again, The Thing, is an all-time classic. The Fly is one of Cronenberg's best, at least most accessible movie. And then The Blob is one of my personal all-time favorite movies. It's just it's the first, I think, contemporary horror movie I really saw, because I was watching like older movies like the Frankensteins, the Godzillas, the Draculas, those kind of movies from like way before I was even alive, and that was like one of the first modern horror movies that I saw. Mercy on TV, and it's just so violent but fun, and the effect. There's a couple shoddy effects, but overall they're really, really, really good. Kevin Dillon and Shawnee Smith are just excellent. In like their teenage like era. It's Chuck Russell, I think, coming right after doing Dream Warriors.
Okay,
yeah, and I think it's a Frank Darabont script, and it's just so great. It's a really, really good movie. You can't go wrong with any of the three of those, but the Blob is definitely the most underrated, if you want to go on that route of those. I definitely think it has a resurgence. If you talk to anyone that's actually seen that one, they'll sing its praises. Like I don't think anyone I know that's actually seen it has ever said like anything bad about it. And sorry, I think I lost my train of thought, but go ahead.
Sorry. But yeah, no, because I was just saying, I know my dad, he would always tell me that when he was a kid, he was so afraid of the original 50s Blob movie. And that's one of those ones you watch, you're like, this is all right. This is what scared you guys back then. All right, man. But yeah, I need to check out the remake.
Because yeah, it took like this really cheesy movie that yeah, for the time might have been scary, but like no, it goes hard. It goes really hard. Like it kills kids left and right, which yeah, in the really shocking ways.
Yeah, and I think those '80s movies definitely hold up a lot better than a lot of the '50s movies because you watch the original Blob, you watch the original Thing, you're like, this is pretty slow, this is not that spooky. And then you watch their respective remakes. I'm like, they're incredible. Like the Thing, like the '80s Thing, the Carpenter one, and he clearly has a real love for the Thing because he puts it in Halloween, like they're watching it on
Yeah.
TV a couple years before he makes it. And it's just like that movie got torn apart upon release. Like people hated it. Did really bad at the box
Mhm.
office. Critics hated it. And now it's like an icon of horror. And it still holds up to this day. Much better
Yeah.
than I think it's remake slash reboot, which is interesting because I think this Fright Night movie, you mentioned that you got the Thing, which comes out around the same time, just a couple months apart or weeks apart. And I feel like it speaks to a trend where they really stop remaking things and are instead doing like continuations or reboots or like things that are
The legacy sequel, yeah.
legacy. Yeah, like I think of like the Halloween, David Gordon Green's Halloween trilogy, which I have very mixed
Oh,
feelings on, and how that's
if
just
only
like,
they
okay,
stopped at the first one.
yeah, the first one was solid, and then it went down real fast.
My theory is the second one's actually really good if you just took out everything that happens at the hospital.
Okay, that's fair.
That's my take
Evil
on
does
that.
not
The
die
third
tonight.
one is just all kinds of bad.
Yeah, the third one's really rough. It's interesting because I think the one movie that has come out that has been like a straight up horror remake in recent years that I was a really big fan of was the 2024 Nosferatu from David Eggers. I love that movie. What did you think of that one?
I liked it. I think I haven't seen it since I saw it in the theater, and I think
Mhm.
I do need to watch it again. I liked it plenty. I think just knowing the plot, the first half seemed really slow because you
Mhm.
just kind of knew all the beats that were going to happen. I love the production design, everything about it. I think I was just kind of like, okay, let's move it on a little quicker. But I do think if I watch it again, I think it'll go down a little bit better. I just haven't had a chance.
Yeah.
I know I appreciate it very, very much. And then we have the new Frankenstein coming out in like 2 weeks.
Yeah,
I'm really
Del
pumped for
Toro.
that.
Yeah,
Some of the
I'm looking forward
reviews
to
have
that.
been a little bit mixed, so I'm just kind of hoping that like once the public sees it, we get a better feel for it. But I'm going to say it either way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely gonna check it out either way. It's one of my most anticipated movies of the year. I love
Mhm.
Del Toro, and this kind of just seems like something he's been working towards for his whole career. So I'm just like,
Yes.
you know what? Like, let's go. Like, I don't think I can do any better than a Del Toro Frankenstein movie with Oscar Isaac. Like, that's pretty
Yeah,
spot on.
like
That's great.
just let them cook.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on, man. This has been an absolute blast. Before you go, where can people find you? Where can the people listen to your podcast? All that good stuff.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This is fun. And I like my perception of movies to be challenged. So if it's a movie that like I don't remember fondly or I've never seen or anything, I like having an excuse to watch them. I want I'm pretty when you have your own podcast, you got kids and jobs and everything. Things are pretty busy, so it's nice to
Fair.
be pushed to watch something,
Well, I'm glad to hear
find
that
a
because
new
that's kind of the
appreciation
whole.
for it.
That's good. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you. That's kind of the whole thing I'm trying to do here is to get to people to reevaluate some of these movies. So I'm glad it
well,
worked.
you're doing the work of the film gods. As far as Dads from the Crypts, we are on that moniker on Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, YouTube, and we also are Dads from the Crypt Talk on TikTok.
Very cool.
And
Very cool.
we post some fun little videos there, a lot of like throwback Tales from the Crypt clips and stuff on TikTok. So if you're into that kind of thing, we have a really fun following on Instagram as well. Those are our two biggest. And then again, we post all our stuff, the audio on all the usual podcasting streams, and then the videos we post on YouTube. Again, we did Sleepaway Camp all throughout September, all 4 movies. And then what did we do? We did the new VHS movie, VHS Halloween, last week. This week, we're going to do Evil Dead 2. And I think we're doing the Frankenstein remake. So we have all kinds of fun stuff to come check it out.
Very cool. Yeah, you guys have some good stuff. I was just listening to your episode on Deep Blue Sea the other day, and love.
Yes.
I had a great time with it. That was so much fun.
Oh yeah, that I love that movie.
But yeah, anybody out there who might be listening the first time, thank you guys for checking this out. You can find Underrated Movie Podcast on all the social medias. Just by looking up Underrated Movie Podcast, go to underratedmoviepodcast.com to check it out and to check out some other stuff that I do as well. I also do another podcast that is released whenever there's a new Marvel thing called Infinity Stones and Dragon Bones. You can also find bonus episodes of that on my Patreon, patreon.com/underratedmoviepodcast. And I also do a whole bonus podcast over there. I'm in between seasons right now, so I'm doing the bonus episodes of Infinity Stones, but next year I'm going to be looking at Amadeus in depth, talking about it in 15-minute chunks on a podcast called A Minute Deus. And then I also do on every other Friday, do a podcast with my buddy Damien called Midnight Film Society, where we look at films or more recently released films, TV shows, stuff like that. It's a more conversational, just type what have you been watching thing. And then, and on the Patreon, if you want to go over there, there's options for $1, $3, and $5 that give you different levels of stuff. And I wanted to shout out, we just got a new patron, James Shell. Thank you for signing up. So if you guys sign up, might read your name out here on the podcast, or if you write a nice review, might do that as well for you. So love to hear from you guys. Love to see you show up on the Patreon, all that good stuff. But yeah, until next time, I've been Derek McDuff, and thank you, Jason, for joining me.
Thanks for having me.